So I look up ACL tears. It's a subject I've heard you and Greg talk about many, many, many times. I don't know if they're called tears or ruptures. I guess it depends on where you're reading. But the numbers are 100,000 to 200,000 ACL ruptures a year. And I know you have some really
in the state in the U.S., right? I mean, that's no
correct. Sorry, thank you. Yes. Yep. In the United States. And I know that it's been, I know it's I had a friend who played Division I soccer, and she told me that every single girl on the team, you could pull up their pants and they got the line on the knee from the surgery.
Yeah.
It's just
I used to when I was playing football, you'd walk into the training room where everybody was getting their ankles taped, Did I lose you?
Oh, no. I'm here. Yep.
Anatomy. All right. And it was this is just personal experience. You'd be waiting to take a table to get your ankles taped, and if the soccer players were in there, it was always really noticeable that the ladies, how many of those scars right on the anterior part of the knee that you would see. And when Greg sent me the article and said, "Hey, let's talk about this," I naturally it's not like I sit around all day long and think about ACL tears. So I sent a couple mutual friends of ours who played soccer in college. I messaged Kelly Jackson and Denise Thomas, and I just said, I go, "Hey, Denise, did you ever tear your ACL?" And she goes, "Twice, the same one," and it's just like that. It'd be an unscientific thing to say that every single one of them has one, but the 1,000 anecdotes is evidence. And it's like every other gal you talk to that's played long enough, they either did or their roommate did or 4 of their teammates did. That's for sure.
It's funny. I've heard so much about ACL tears, and I've never even actually Googled and looked up an image of one until last night, and I did, and I see. And you have some theories on why this happens, right? Why this happens, and it's significantly more prevalent in women's sports. I got some data on that also. Happens to women twice as much basically as it happens to men.
6x in soccer.
6? Wow.
Yeah. 6 to 7.
Yep, you'll usually hear that 2 to 8 times more likely range, and that's probably accurate. I think more men tear their ACLs just because there's more opportunities, right? More guys engaged in rugged play. So, but as far as on a per capita basis, ladies are definitely more susceptible. And then when Greg mentioned soccer, it's for women, soccer's number 1, volleyball's number 2. For men, football's number 1, soccer's number 2. So soccer is a big one, obviously, across both sexes. Yeah.
And why do you think this is happening? You have some theories on this?
Well, this is nothing new, and I messaged our friend Sean Rocket as well just to confirm. I'll tell you, I'll give you a list of the anatomical things that have been cited. Now, just like the problem with most science, I mean, none of the studies can really be called 100% reliable, but the big one in the 90s was Q angle. So it was the Q angle is basically when you draw a line from the front of the hip down to the kneecap and then down to the notch that sits on the tibia. Essentially, we're talking about hip width and how that cuts in from the hip down towards the knees. That was like the big one that they told us in the 90s. I think that's a factor now, but they've shown that when they take various Q angles within male groups and within females, you can't call that the one singular reason. But women do have wider hips. There you go. Yep. And so essentially, in layman's term, knock-kneed, we know that's a big problem. But as a contrarian, much like Greg is, and we all are, just because the hips are wider on average in women, that doesn't mean that's the only reason that you're going to see that knock-kneed movement. I was just texting Sean. I said, show me a volleyball camp or a soccer camp with 100 high school female athletes and have them do a series of jumping and landing and deadlifts and squats, and I'll show you 100 knock knees, right? Like you'll see knees caving in. And but if show me 100 female CrossFit athletes and you won't see that. So it can't just be the gender component, if that makes sense. You have what's called you could look this up. You have what's called the condyle width. So those bumps when you pull up that behind the knee. There are differences between men and women. And so you have these two little bumps that sit there, and they'll measure the width. That is different. Women tend to have smaller ACLs. And then the last one, you will see more anterior tilt in females than men. So like if you look at a woman from the side, looks like she's sticking her butt out, and anterior tilt. There's some things that supposedly does that can indirectly make you more prone to your knees caving in, that same knock-knee valgus motion. So I would be lying to say that this is not, and like if you ask someone who's repaired a ton of these, they can speak to this evidence. And if you were to add all that up, it probably would, you add it all together, it could answer for why it's more prevalent in women. And then here's the other big one: quad to hamstring strength, the ratio, right? Are you quad dominant or hamstring dominant, in other words? And
are you cell phone dominant? Are you internet dominant? Are you connection dominant? Wait till no, you're still there. Wait till I read through the comments. You're gonna love the comments in a second. I mean, it's like
we go through this list of things, and they're all factors. And I think logically and scientifically, I'm good with all of them except the last one, the quad hamstring imbalance. I long thought that was bullshit, and I got a host of reasons for it. But we'll come back to that. But listen, these are factors in the occurrence, but it doesn't speak to what we might do about it. And that's
sure. Yeah.
I think Joe has terrific insights that missing.
Well, and I wanted to throw all that out there because I don't know what the comments say, and I don't really care either. But
it's important to throw it out there. We're laying a good foundation for the picture. This is all
I'm just
good.
laying. I'm just laying this foundation because none of it really matters. So if all those things are true about the differences between men and women, the stability of the knee needs to be greater, and so we need to be stronger by a significant margin. And how we go about getting strong, and how we define strong, all matters. And I would agree with Greg. And I think I was telling Sean this too via text. I think also that the quad hamstring thing is kind of bullshit because the only way they really determine it is using a biodex machine, which is really like a leg extension, leg curl test. But that's not how the hamstring actually functions in a person when their feet are on the ground anyway. So I don't know where you want me to start with my thoughts on this, but I'll start as simple as possible. If you're weak, you're more likely to get injured. And the best way to get strong, if we're talking about the knee specifically, is to do squats and deadlifts. And squats are not squats if they're not done below parallel. And you will get quad dominance when you are above parallel. And the minute you crack the parallel line and below, your hamstring is contributing to that effort significantly. And so that's like where I start the conversation with prevention and recovery.
Let me ask you a quick question, Joe. Let's say you do squat, but you don't squat below parallel. Are you actually possibly exacerbating the problem?
Well, you will end up with, you'll end up with bigger quads and smaller hamstrings unless you're doing a whole bunch of other work to strengthen your hamstring.
We can end up with a leg able to exert forces that it can't accommodate.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So, go on. I apologize, Joe. Go on.
Yeah, no. Well, your ACL test is like an anterior shear. So they'll grab your ankle and they put their hand behind your calf and they pull your leg forward, right? So that's anterior shear. Well, when you when your quad contracts, it's going to take your ankle, just like when you get your reflex tested at the doctor's office, and it's going to extend it forward. But when your foot is in a fixed position, when your quad contracts, it's going to pull. It's going to basically do that shear test. It's going to pull that upper part of your shin, your tibia, away from your knee. And so that, like, when you squat a heavy load that shouldn't be on your back, if you can't carry it below parallel and you stop above parallel, then you have a whole bunch of anterior shear, and you don't have the counteraction of the hamstrings on the back side pulling it back into place. And I don't know if that's exactly what Greg was saying there, but
exactly right. And you can feel that in a wall sit where I have that horrible fucking exercise where I take the hamstring and the glute out of supporting yourself and put it all on the quads. You can feel that shear in the knee.
What's that weird? They call it the perfect squat. You guys know what I'm talking about? Where you stand inside of it and you can lean back. It's like you put your feet inside the anchors and you lean back and you do a squat. You can look this up right now on YouTube Shorts, and you'll find several people blowing their ACLs while they go about doing that.
It's called the perfect squat machine.
I think it's called the perfect squat. I can't remember. That might be just proprietary, but
I'm looking for images. I just see a bunch of things that look like Smith machines and shit. You know what I mean?
Same kind of thing. It does the same thing. We need the sum of the vector forces to come to zero in perfect balance. And with your ass against the wall, hack squat, Smith machine, that fucking thing, any of these things, the sum of the forces isn't zero. And I swear to God, you can feel it. Anyone right now, just do a wall sit, stay there for a while, and feel what you're feeling in the knee. It's not healthy. Yeah. And if you've got laxity in the knee, there it is. You're like, wow, this is destructive.
Well, and on the other end of that, what we do know is now not all squats are the same, but if you do a back squat just below parallel, your ACL virtually is doing nothing. You're not squatting in your knees is the slang term. So people won't have ACLs and they can still squat massive amounts of weight because, again, it's just the mechanics of the situation. But what's funny is I went on when Greg said, hey, let's talk about this, and I used to talk about it all the time, I went on a little hunt for it, and Greg sent me the article was to the Women's World Cup. I think there was 32 of them that weren't present because of ACL tears. And anything that's come out recently or all the way back to 10 years, you look this up, and the reason I listed all the potential reasons that all the anatomical differences is because every one of these articles will go through that same list of things. And the one thing that no one argues about is that this can be prevented through strength training. But the bigger conversation is, what does strength training actually mean, and how are these things defined? But I was shocked to find that in the last 4 years, anything that you stumble across ultimately comes down to some type of thing that is, what's the best way to word this? That women are at a disadvantage culturally, that they don't have the access to the strength training. That's everyone. It does, whether it's from ESPN, CBS. At the very end, it'll be some. It's like a sexist thing.
What culture is that? What culture is that?
Well, hey, I mean, it's pretty crazy to read. But what's funny, as contrarians, I think there is a place to talk about the differences in sexes that are not anatomical. But if you hear me out, let's just take a soccer team, college women's soccer team. There's not a single lady on that team that shouldn't at least deadlift twice their body weight.
Just real quick to put that in context, you're talking about women who are now playing soccer at the second highest level on planet Earth. And by the time you get to this level, a healthy, strong soccer player who's balanced should be able to deadlift twice her body weight, meaning she shouldn't be morbidly obese. She should have a good body weight, and she should have a strength that's commensurate to that. Okay, go. I just wanted to make sure I put that in perspective for people. Okay.
And I think this is an important conversation, and it'll actually turn into love for the ladies, in a respectful way, not from a place of chauvinism. And it's an important conversation. So because double body weight deadlift is not an overly impressive feat, but you would find that the majority of collegiate female athletes can't do it, and men for that matter either. But yet I just watched a 62-year-old female the other day at the local affiliate deadlift well over double body weight, and she did not come from an athletic background.
Wow. Wow.
If you deadlift and then a week later you deadlift a little bit more, that process will continue for probably 100 exposures, right? So you quickly get to these numbers. And so the point I'm making is that's not happening. And so then there would be some equivalent amount that they should squat as well and do so below parallel. Double body weight deadlift is not much to ask, and it's not much to ask well before the career is over. And like this isn't by the time they graduate. This is probably after a year or two. They should be at that number. And ideally, they would be there before they get to college, right? Like many of our young CrossFit teens are. And I did something interesting. I looked up this topic, why so many women tear their ACLs, after Greg sent me the article. There's the top 5 searches. And I looked at what studies were cited. So something took me to why we know the answer is strength and conditioning, but why are women at a disadvantage in this regard? Took me to a study done at Michigan State, and I'll conclude this story pretty quickly. They still cited another study, right? It's like people citing our DeVore injury study. You're like, this thing gets like I'm like, oh, this isn't the study. This isn't the study. This isn't the study. And so I traced it back to an article and a study conducted by ESPNW. I think that's ESPN Women. And they did it. And it was fascinating. They did interviews of 102 Division I female college athletes. And you can look this up. And some of the interviews were through SurveyMonkey and the other ones were in person. And they asked them 13 questions. And these were athletes from different sports. And I have these numbers. I wrote all these numbers down and you can look it up. And so I might be off by a few percentage points. But these are Division I female college athletes. And 68, the question, do you feel the need to be pretty? 68% said yes. Do you fear being too bulky? It was like half of them said yes. Have you ever been told you're fat by a coach? 25% of them said yes. Do any of your teammates have an eating disorder? 35% of them said yes.
Seems low.
Do you fear getting bulky? It was at least a third that said yes. And so if someone were to come to me, not a CrossFitter, but someone were to come to me and say, hey, my son's 185 pounds. He wants to play Division I football within 18 months he's a linebacker. What does he need to do? I said, well, he's got to be, 225 pounds, and he needs to deadlift, start the conversation at double body weight. And, well, what would you say? Well, you need to get stronger. You need to get bigger. And the only way you can support that is through consuming a very large number of calories, for lack of a better word, and a large percentage of that needs to be animal protein. And so I sent another friend of ours who played Division I soccer and who's on seminar staff. And I said, how much do you weigh now? She's qualified for the games before. She's 135 pounds. How much did you weigh when you were a college soccer player? 110 pounds. And I had an eating disorder half the time. And I ate less than 2,000 calories a day. And the smallest contribution of that was protein. And so I just felt the need to talk about that today because everything I stumbled upon talked about this idea of sexism and the lack of ability to be exposed to weight rooms and things like that. But I just thought it was funny because CrossFit's one of the safest places for ladies to lift large weight, gain muscle mass, eat large amounts of protein, and squat below parallel and make it your monthly goal to see your deadlift numbers go up.
The party line is that there's no differences between men and women, and that being male or female is actually just a state of mind in the end. And anyone that's able to show any differences where you can't deny it, then it's the men's fault.
Yeah.
It's just great. It's just classic bullshit. This is the religion of mommy has a cock. But in terms of those differences between the sexes, to focusing on that is to put too much attention on something you can do nothing about.
That's right.
What you can do is radically improve the knee's strength and stability.
Yes.
That's what we do. We do that without thinking about it.
Yeah. And that is there's where your conversation of broken science and just a bunch of useless bullshit filling 98% of a text in the formal education of this line of work, physical education, exercise science. And I couldn't agree with you more. And
by the way, data that comes from a survey, you're not doing science. You're polling,
correct.
you're polling, but it isn't science.
Yes, sir. And I will say this too, no matter what you throw at me about the difference in sexes, the answer is still going to come back to be the same. So men are stronger than women even before puberty. On average, there are outliers. I don't care. So what's the answer? Make them stronger, all of them, right? And men are stronger than women after puberty. I don't care. The answer is still make them stronger, and we can absolutely do something about that. And we're going to do it in the exact same way, by the way.
And this gets us right to a better beautiful. If I can bring up some history here.
Yeah, please bring it up. Yeah. Do you want me to
pull it up or not? I'm not,
Oh, it was written, right?
Yeah. It was in the program to the games at Carson, I think our last year there.
Okay. It's funny because I remember it as in the video. Let me see. Yep, here we go. Here we go. Hey, Joe, while I bring this up, is there a specific program? Can you point to something and be like, hey, in this journal article right here, there's a program that is a back squat and deadlift program that I think like it will get you on your way to giving your ACL hedging against injury for soccer players, female soccer players? Or is it just go into your affiliate and sign up now? Is there like something you could point to?
Well, I would say that the issue of going into an affiliate when you are a collegiate athlete, just let me say that, is difficult because you have an obligation to show up to your designated team training. If you are a young, if you are the parent of young kids, if CrossFit programming is done correctly and you can get them there on a frequent enough basis to where they're exposed to squatting weekly, deadlifting weekly, then that is a tremendous place to start. For high school weight training coaches out there, everything you know about percentages should be thrown out the window, and complex programs. And if you squat with proper technique to a full range of motion, and then the next time you do it, you add 5 pounds to it, that process could probably be followed throughout the duration of a high school career. And that sounds really, really simple, but that's all there is to it.
And when you say deadlifting, all the different